that, I thought these chats are always good to have with people who have more recently completed CTA, especially because that's like your biggest barrier to entry. I think probably the first question that I ask people, bearing in mind that we're having this conversation on behalf or for the benefit of people who haven't started CTA yet, or in the middle of it, towards the end of it, is what is it that you wish someone had told you or that you knew before you started CTA?
Now that I look back as someone who's actually completed the degree, if I think of where my life is now compared to when you approach PGDA, I would say to remember that it's just one step along the path to qualifying. I think while you're studying, it feels like the biggest hurdle, which understandably it probably is, but to remember that your worth doesn't lie in passing on the first attempt. I think when you go into it for the first time, and this was true for my own experience, where I felt this has to be passed the first time. There's no option to try it again because of how difficult the first attempt was. So I would say give yourself as many chances as you need. Remember, it's not a race, but rather a fair opportunity to take as many attempts as you should or as you need. Yes, I would say don't limit yourself. Don't feel that if you don't pass the first time that the journey's over. There's no other option, because I'm sure there are several successful CAs who have experienced failure along the way.
Yeah. Okay, but if someone, which I get, I quite like that statement, or the awareness that if it's something that you want, be aware that it may take more than once to do. Fine. But if someone had have said that to you in your first year, like your first month sitting down, and someone was like, don't worry, a lot of you are not going to pass this the first time, how would you have reacted to hearing that?
I think this is something I was thinking about earlier. I think naturally those of us who pursue the CA qualification are quite academic. So for a lot of us, PGDA is the first time when we experience an academic failure. So if you had to tell me that at the start of my first attempt, I would have thought, no, that's not for me, not interested. I'm just here for one attempt, no, not a second attempt. So I think it's almost something that you exclude yourself from. Generally, during high school, you're performing well, featuring in the top 10, undergrad as well. It's almost like by the time PGDA comes, there's a switch that just flips and you realize the reality of failure and how important it is that if you do, like I said, give yourself another chance. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. So what do you feel... if you could say, okay, Yvonne, there were two things that cost me CTA the first time, what would the biggest things be?
I think I can boil it down to I would say stumbling blocks, where I began articles. It was my first year of articles. So it's a very new experience, learning your way around the working world. Articles are generally your first ever job. It's the first time you are employed full time, and then having to commit to studying full time as well. If I remember, PGDA required also, I think 40 hours a week. I don't think
it's 35 or something.
Yeah, so
it's like 30, 35.
It's basically two full-time jobs. I would say I sometimes felt a bit of an imbalance between working and study, not knowing of the work. Do you spend time on the overtime client, or do you spend your time studying? I think the time management is something that I only learned along the way. It didn't come naturally. But the thing is, PGDA didn't wait. It happened. It didn't stop while I figured out my time management. And then secondly, I think genuinely that I underestimated PGDA. I don't think I realized the seriousness or the difficulty level of it. I think my study technique was way off. I don't remember engaging properly with the content. It was more there was more focus on the volume compared to the quality. So that is something that I look back and I realize I don't think I fully understood what it took to pass.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's such a tricky one to explain to somebody who hasn't made that shift. So if we're talking to people who are busy with or going into CTA, PGDA, to try and explain to them, yes, you're covering the same topics that you did in third year. It's the same stuff. So, like, what's the problem? And I think this is where we come in. Yeah, and we go, well, I did well in like third year. I did okay. I did all right. So how bad could this be? This is okay. Like, I did okay in third year. And then you hear, well, CTA isn't a huge amount of new topics. So what's the problem? And then you realize the questions are from another planet. And the way that they're asking stuff is like nothing you've ever seen before. So the topics are still the same deferred tax, like still the same deferred tax. But where you used to recognize the questions and go, oh, they want me to calculate deferred tax. Now you're looking going, I don't know what they want from me. What am I supposed to be doing here? And then when you look at the solution, they're like, oh, they wanted me to calculate deferred tax. Why didn't they just say so? Why don't they just tell me that? I don't understand why didn't they just tell me that? So I think the skill shifts are what students, you talk about it as, I didn't really engage with it in the way that was needed. And to a large extent, that has nothing to do with the content or the topic itself. That's got to do with the underlying skill requirements. CTA requires you to explain stuff, to discuss it, to like, why is this the case? Take me through your thought process. And we're not used to doing that. We're used to saying, well, the answer's 5. I'm good. Like, I got the calculations there. The answer's 5. Can we all go home now? And we're used to doing that. And then you get there, oh, it's nice that you said the answer's 5. Why did you say the answer's 5? What were you looking at? What about this? And we're like, no. I don't even know where to begin. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know how to communicate that. And so to some extent, I think when students move from undergrad into postgrad, there's a sense that the world has shifted and I'm just I can't get a grip, can't quite get a grasp on it because it's still financial instruments, but now I'm lost and I shouldn't be because I have a degree in this crap. I know what I'm doing. So I think, the time management, especially if you're working and studying, is a really, really big one. And then I agree with you. I think people go in with a very clear understanding, like CTA is going to be hard. I think they're not really aware of the shape of what makes it hard. What makes it hard isn't the volume. What makes it hard is that they're asking you to do the types of things you're not used to doing. We didn't get into accounting because we were good with discussion questions. None of us got into accounting because we were good with communication. We got into accounting because we're good with numbers. And now you're asking me to do discussion questions all over the show. No, that's not why. So I think those are two the full-time students have a little bit less of a time management issue, but for those who are studying part-time and doing articles or working at all, how you're supposed to balance out 35 hours studying alongside a job is, I don't know how you're supposed to do it. I did the same, but now when I look back at it, I'm like, I really don't know how it happened. I'm not sure how that actually worked out. So one of the things that you mentioned that you would advise students to do is to get accountability partners. How did that work for you? Was that something that you did, or was it something that you looked back at and said, I should have done that?
It was fortunately something that I got to implement during the second attempt. We studying the same thing at the same time together, but just knowing that there is someone busy studying at the same time as you. And I think accountability is so important in the sense that that person's probably studying. You need to bring your part as well. I think it's a cool way to engage with your peers, but at the same time, there's so much benefit in that, especially if you're doing it over the weekend and capitalizing on that free time, that you're going to leave with about, I think, 6 hours, 7 hours of study time on a Saturday. So I think accountability is so important because it's not always what you feel like doing. It's kind of what you just need to do.
Yeah.
So yes, I wouldn't say it's the motivation. It's more of gaining the discipline along the way.
Yeah. So do you have any ideas or any advice in terms of choosing accountability partners?
I would say maybe even someone, so in my case, it was someone who was completing articles with me. Okay. I think that helped a lot because you kind of have a lot in common with the person. And they know the struggles that you go through. They can also remind you when to apply for study leave beforehand. So I think just that support was really good from that perspective, that you are both experiencing the same audit firm and you're like in the same year of articles as well. So I'm not saying that you have to restrict it to that. I'm just saying that I found that really supportive.
Yeah. Because I think there's a lot of value that you can get. I did that when I was doing CTA as well. It was someone that we were in class together. We obviously were in part-time classes, and then we would get together on the weekends and study. And the studying was more just we were both doing questions. But then at least if you're doing them at the library or you're doing them somewhere, you're not sleeping, you're not going and taking a nap. So I totally agree with that. I would, considering this discussion is for the benefit of others, I always caution people, be very careful about who you choose as accountability partners. Like, who you choose to be a study buddy with can actually be more detrimental. So don't make commitments until you know the person a little better. So it's you get into class and you're making friends or you work and everything seems fine and happy and whatever the case is. And you're like, oh yeah, let's study together. Just wait. Just wait. The first thing you want to stay away from is, I call them emotional vampires. Stay away from emotional vampires. Emotional vampires are people who always drain your energy and they always drain your emotions. So they're generally complaining a lot. There's always some kind of drama. It's always someone else's fault. And they're using you and they're using people around them to bolster their energy and to bolster their emotions and to make them feel better. Now, if you choose this person as a study buddy, you're going to be spending all your time trying to make them feel better, trying to get them to do what they're supposed to do, listening to how it's everybody else's fault and how everyone wants them to fail and how the university hates them and the lecturers hate them and all that crap. Stay away from emotional vampires. Before you choose your study buddy, before you choose accountability partners, watch how they behave, watch what they complain about, watch how they talk about stuff. One, obviously, you don't want to be the emotional vampire. You don't want to be that person. But be very careful that you don't tie yourself with someone who's going to take more from you instead of this being a give and take relationship, because it's going to be days where you're okay and they're crap and you have to pull them and come on, we can do this. It's okay. The world is not ending. And there's going to be times where you're crap and they're pulling you up. So you want a give and take relationship. You want it to be in balance, but you want to be really careful about aligning yourself with someone who's always got an excuse for why stuff hasn't been done, why it's always someone else's fault, why there's always a life drama, why there's always an excuse, why there's always someone. That's, and try and find somebody who has the same approach to studying that you have. So if you've chosen my approach, and we'll talk about that, is I want to focus more on doing questions, don't align yourself with somebody whose approach is, I want to focus more on getting to know my theory. Because then you're going to be spending all your time arguing with each other about why your particular study method is more effective or why you should be doing or shouldn't have or whatever the case is. So make sure that your beliefs in terms of how you should be studying are aligned, because not everybody is looking for, we're not all the same, and the same doesn't necessarily work for us. So it's the accountability thing, and at the very least, just having someone that you can kind of just be yourself with and know, I'm not crazy. This is just really hectic. I'm not mad. This is crap, right? This is really crap. is, I agree, that's incredibly, and I really like what you say about the difference between motivation and discipline. So for most people that I know, and I would imagine based on what you're saying, you didn't get through CTA because you felt motivated to do so.
Not at all.
It was the discipline, right? I would probably say my experience certainly was, but I would imagine yours is like, what percentage of your studying were you sitting there going, I hate everything. This has to be over. I don't know if I can keep doing this.
I think at least 70% of the time. I think while you're going through it, it feels like, can this just be over? Test one is finished, test two, eventually it's exams. You're just waiting and waiting. It feels like one long waiting game and just wanting it to be over. I haven't heard anyone look back and say, no, they really enjoyed it. It was all smooth sailing. It was so perfect.
No,
I
me
think,
neither.
yes, like it definitely boils down to discipline and knowing that, for example, a weekend has come, you need to study. It's not optional anymore, especially the closer you get to your assessments.
Yeah. I think that's a really good. I do get students all the time emailing me like, can you give me some motivation? No, I'm sorry, I can't. There really isn't. If the motivation of having a life-changing qualification isn't enough, and it is enough, but that feeling of that's going to be great in the future doesn't help get you out of bed on a winter morning and Saturday at 8 o'clock. Kind of, no. Then you're just like, no. And I'm still failing questions anyway. It doesn't seem to matter how much I'm studying financial management. I'm still failing questions. And so that's not motivation. That's just close eyes, take the next step and keep going. So I think that's important because I think people do kind of go, well, maybe the problem is that I don't feel motivated. And maybe that's why I'm not doing well. No, the choice needs to be, I need to keep doing stuff regardless of how I feel. That's
100%.
Yeah, that's really, really tough. And speaking of stuff that we don't want to be doing, let's talk about questions. Let's talk about doing questions.
I think, especially the closer that I got to each of the tests, it really helped to go through past papers, just because I found that the layout of the past papers is basically identical to the format that you'd be tested in. So I personally found a lot of value in that, especially with the tests that have as a bigger weighting towards your year mark. I think most of the value came from testing yourself and then going to mark yourself to see exactly what you would have scored and understand where your gaps are. So I think that if you can approach it with just with such good engagement, really understanding, going with an open mind to be able to understand where you've went wrong, I think you leave with such a positive experience and such renewed confidence because you're now learning something that you didn't know before. I think also that there are occasions where maybe you go through it and you still don't know where you went wrong. But I think that's when I would take it a step further and then actually consult with a lecturer because sometimes you really do need someone to support you to that extent. But I think ultimately where you find the value is in the self-reflection phase of studying. 100%, I know it's important to know the lecture content, to watch your lecture videos, but I think genuinely where I learned about my own capabilities and my weaknesses were with marking my own attempts.
Yeah. But that for most students, that's not something that's comfortable, right? Because when you do those questions, they're not going very well. Yes. So it's great that you say now, yeah, this is a good thing, but it didn't feel good at the time.
Not at all. I remember so many times we had to have the past paper after having gone through what I felt was enough of the lecture content to now attempt it. and have a mini breakdown and think, no, but if I wrote this on the day of the exam, I'm going to get a 0. I don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
But then as you go through it, like I'm saying, whether or not the hypothetical mark is good or not, it's really about building the confidence and understanding what techniques to follow, understanding where the knowledge gaps are. I don't think the exercise is there to be comfortable about. It's there to push yourself to a certain limit. And like I'm saying, the confidence really only comes after you've gone through the exercise.
Yeah. I was going to say, you mentioned confidence, and I think that's a word that I'd be very careful about using, because I think people that are doing CTA, their perception of confidence may be very different to what we're talking about. When you've come from, let's say, someone that's come out of third year that's never really failed anything, their perception of confidence is, I feel confident that I can get this right. So when we talk about confidence, we're talking about, or that person is talking about, I feel confident that I can get this right. And so my confidence lies in my ability to be right, and lies in the fact that I know what I'm doing, right? Then you touch CTA and you've never been confident about anything, and you have no idea, and you don't know. Confidence goes out the window, right? But what you learn then is that it's not, you need confidence in your ability to learn and your ability to improve. And that's what you're building is, okay, I've done this question. It was completely crap, which is terrible because I thought that I did the work. I thought I kind of had some idea, but clearly I don't. So to begin with, that person's going to think, oh, well, now your confidence has just fallen apart completely. Fine. But when you close those gaps and you learn, oh, this is what I need to be doing here, this is what they expect from me, you build a strength and you build an ability to approach difficult problems that you go, okay, when someone puts a difficult problem in front of me, I'm not going to fall apart. I'm not going to die. I've learned how to deal with situations. I've learned how to stay calm. I've learned how to think about stuff and break things down. I think when people use the word confidence around that higher levels of studying, I get very nervous because people's perception of confidence is, oh, I'm confident I know the answer. No. That's not what we're talking about. You're never going to be confident in CTA. There's no such thing. Like, doesn't work. Okay. But you can build confidence in your ability to approach problems and your ability to sit in front of an unknown exam and go, okay, let me think about this, and let me use all the tools that I have, and let me use all the knowledge, and no one's going to die. So I think the word confidence can range. We all have different perceptions, but when students are like, oh, but Yvonne, I'm not confident, they're saying, yeah, I don't know the answer. I'm like, you're never going to know the answer. That's not.
Yeah.
That's not happening. If you know the answer, then I'm highly suspicious. No way. It's not going to happen. So yeah, I think it's very difficult when you're in that space of not passing the questions, and someone hears you say, oh, it was good to do the questions. To some extent, they're hearing, oh, but the questions must have gone all right for her. Like, her questions must have been okay, because when I do questions, it's a disaster, it's traumatic, it's horrible. So that's why I just want to slow the conversation down and go, you're saying it was a good thing to do the questions and that it added a lot of value and it was very beneficial and everything, but they still went crap.
100%.
Okay. Because I don't want people to go, oh, yeah, okay, well, it's good. Yeah, no, they weren't good. They were crap. And then you had to sit back and go, okay, what do I need to improve? What do I need to change? What do I need to get help on? What's working? What's not working? Okay, so I want to clarify that, because normally when people are like, oh, it was good to do questions. Oh, so you got them right. No. It was
no.
There were tears. There was comfort food. There were late nights. There was crying. Like, no, it's nasty. So how much of the year did you spend thinking, I'm never going to get this right?
I think, especially during the time spent watching the lecture video, sometimes concepts wouldn't land immediately. And then that's when you finish the video and you think, but I don't know if I've learned what I'm supposed to learn. So that becomes a very scary thought, and it's a thought that you have to deal with along the entire PGDA journey. So I would say that thought popped up countless times.
And yet you still did the stuff.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were ready for those final exams when you did them? I'm done now. I know my stuff. I'm good. I'm going to be fine. It's all good.
I think it was more of a situation where I tried to go in as prepared as I could for myself. I don't remember covering 100% of the content. I think it was going in with the knowledge that if something throws me off, knowing that I need to center myself, go back to basics. There were times where you do feel unprepared, you get a question and you don't even know where to start. And my approach was always to ask myself, wait, like, surely I know some sort of basics. So I think I wouldn't go so far to say 100% prepared, everything was fine. It was really going with your toolkit and using those tools and resources wisely for the duration of each exam.
Yeah. But yeah, again, and the reason that I asked that, just to reinforce, is that so most students go into the entire process going, I don't feel I'm ready for this. But the important thing is that how you feel isn't necessarily representative of the outcome. Just because you feel like I'm not ready doesn't mean that you won't pass. So I think students are like, Yvonne, I'm waiting to feel ready. So I have students who delay exams, or they delay their year, they push out the year, and they change their registration because they're like, I'm not ready. But you will never be ready the way that you used to be ready for exams. The way we used to be ready for exams back in undergrad, you're never going to be ready in that way. But I like the way you said, I'm as ready as I'm going to be, given the time and the deadlines and given everything. I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm like, now I've got to go in and make the best of whatever. But there's no way that you're feeling, yeah, I'm sorted. Ask me anything. I'm good. I'm fine. I don't think I've ever met anyone ever who's like, yeah, no, it's good. I'm ready. Ask me anything. Like, I've never met it. If anybody has had that experience or knows of someone, I would love to speak to this person. If you know of someone who went into their CTA exams with that, like, it's cool. I know everything. Ask me anything.
Ask me anything.
Yeah, I want to see that person. I'm like, send them to me. I really want to chat to that person because I've never met them. In the 17, 18 years I've been doing this, I've never met someone like that. So if you feel stupid, you're in good company. I think that's because we spend most of CTA year feeling stupid and worrying about whether or not we're too stupid to pass. And the closer that you get to the exam, somehow with the stress, you feel more stupid. Then, like, I've never known more in my life, and I've never been capable of doing less. I don't understand. So that's good. I want people to understand how you feel does not dictate how you're going to do. These things are not
what the outcome will be.
What the outcome is going to be. Yeah. So as tough as that was, would you go back and do it again?
I was actually addressing a few students, and I said, I don't think I realized the nostalgia behind PGDA. I think I look back and I remember during winter, you're sitting with your blanket, your hot chocolate, you're engaged for a few hours. I miss the pursuit of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that when you look back, I think, like I've said, during the pursuit, it feels impossible. It feels like this huge mountain that you have to overcome. But looking back, I would do it again. And I think it's just because of the major impact it's had on my own life and the lives of other people that you get to inspire. So I don't have any regrets. I've never looked back and thought, why am I trying this again? So I think it was such a pivotal part of the journey that it really shaped my entire life and my career.
Yeah. So as tough as it was to hit that point of failing and then doing this again, that's gut-wrenching. That's really, like, really, really gut-wrenching because you know that it's your toughest year. You know it's the most important year. And you've worked to get there, and then you're kind of kicked in the stomach, and you've got to get back up again. To be able to do that, I have a huge amount of respect for people who are able to do that, because it is insane. But I think it's an indication for people who are struggling that, as horrible as it is very worthwhile. There is a lot of value. There is a lot of value in the goal that, you know, that you're pursuing. For me, in all honesty, I was like, I would not go back and do it again. I'm glad that I did it, but I wouldn't do it again. That's kind of how I feel about it. I'm really glad that I did it. But if you said, okay, Yvonne, you've got to go back and do this again for whatever reason, I'm like, nope, I'll do something else. Thanks.
You're fine.
I'll find something else to do if I want to do this. I couldn't do it again. So well done you. So yeah, I think that's it's the biggest barrier to entry. But I think of all the stuff that you've said, probably the one that is the thing that I think is probably for a lot of students is very valuable, is just slowing down and saying, you need to, if this is something that you want, you need to be aware that it might take you more than once to do it.
Yes.
Oh, that sounds so terrible. And I really don't like saying that for a bunch of reasons, and that's not to say that, oh, you're okay with making bad study decisions or sort of half-assing it. But the reality is the stuff is nasty. The stuff is really, really, really nasty, especially if you're studying part-time. To get through that volume of work at that level and those requirements is really, really, really unreasonable. So I think it's to say, well, the first attempt was my experience, was my basic experience. And now I know what I need to do. Now I know, and I don't need to start from scratch. I can pick up where I left off. I think that's important. This is not necessarily something that has to be done the very first time, as much as we want that to be the case. Obviously, we want it to be the case. We're working towards, it's not like anybody's going in there going, hey, I'm just going to do this over 3 years. Nobody's doing that. But accept that as hard as you do and as much as you've done, it may not be enough to reach your goal the first time. And you've got to realize that doesn't mean it's the end. Which is very difficult for us achievers. Very, very difficult for us achievers to actually understand. Okay, so what are your career plans then? What do you feel like your future holds for you?
I don't know why this is such a difficult question. It's changed a lot.
Oh, that's interesting. No, but that's good. That's interesting.
I think because you'll see from my LinkedIn profile of the articles, I've had a very scenic journey. I really struggled to find my feet. I think during articles, there's an end in sight, you know, that you're there for 3 years. The thing is, after articles, I feel, or in my experience, it changed where you don't know how long things will take anymore. There's no more timeline. Yeah. But I think I've kind of found my feet in the manufacturing industry. I don't think I can put a job title to it. I've kind of really found such a deep passion for manufacturing. I've enjoyed learning several different aspects about the environment, but things that you wouldn't really learn in theory during any of your studies. So I think I found my position in the working world, but I can't really put a title to it. I don't know if that even
Absolutely.
helps.
I'm so glad you're saying this, because I think the idea that we have a simple title, like a 2-word title, the corporate ladder, like you choose your path and you choose your career and then you climb the ladder, and is is very last generation. I don't think that world really exists anymore. It exists for a very small group of people. I'm going to be an audit partner. I'm going to be a financial manager, something simple and clean. The world is so much messier and so much broader and so much more interesting. And so I think, and in that sense, you echo a lot of stuff that I hear from a lot of other people qualifying, especially more recently, because the world is changing dramatically. And a very common theme among people that are finishing their qualification is that I don't know what comes next. I don't know what that is, because we used to sort of feel that we had to have chosen a path, we had to have a thing, we had to have but what we forget is that we were on a very specific path, and you called it a timeline, but in a way we were on a very specific path with goals, with markings, milestones, and we didn't have to decide where to go. We just knew I need to get to the next one, and I need to put it, and like I'm going there. Once that's behind you, once the qualification process is gone, once you're out there, you're now standing in the middle of a field. There is no path. It's just an open field. And so you have to now decide, I'm going to walk in that direction. I'm going to walk in that direction. I'm going to walk in that. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how long it's going to take to get there. And then you see something on the horizon and go, oh, that looks interesting. I want to walk over there. And you stay there for a while. You're like, oh, okay, no, this is not actually interesting. And then you walk around. That's what the world looks like at the moment. So I think the fact that you're sort of saying, I have an area of interest, but there's no clean title. There's no clean that someone will be able to understand. I think that's, at the moment, for where the world is, that's very normal. And it's going to become increasingly prevalent because the world is huge and things are different and changing all the time. So the more that we can accept that things are not clean and that there's not like these, I'm going to be a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, and it's a single word, small, that no, no, you can create something really, really, really interesting in like a tiny, tiny little niche, minute field. And that's terribly exciting, but it doesn't mean that it's got to be on anybody's career brochure kind of thing. So I think the fact that you found something that excites you, let that excite you. Don't allow that feeling of, oh, but I feel like haven't quite figured it out yet, because you won't, because the reality is your career is probably going to shift in another 5-10 years anyway. Then let it.
Yes.
Let it, because that's the way the world works. We typically reinvent ourselves every 10 years. And it'll probably become a little more regular because of the way that the world is changing. So allow yourself to move towards what excites you, and don't worry about the titles. Don't worry about, because that is the more that we want to hang on to the old titles, the more we're going to struggle, because the world doesn't really look that way anymore.
Yeah, I think there's so much joy in finding what you're passionate about. I think I've learned, don't get me wrong, I've learned that it really depends on you to bring the passion. But I think when you are in an environment where the passion is so easily ignited, it makes the whole experience so much better. So I think compared to pursuing a title, pursue your passion.
Yeah.
And I think that's really where you'll get much more value.
Yeah. But it also means you have to explore a little bit, because there's a possibility that you won't find your passion in the job, or maybe your articles. So you may have to scratch around a little. If you were able to find and something sparked your interest in your work or your job or some of your clients or whatever the case is, that's great. But maybe it didn't, and that's fine too. It doesn't mean you don't have a passion. It just means you need to explore a little more, do a little more reading, do a little more scratching, talk to people, whatever the case is. But I think the beauty of the qualification is that it provides a really great foundation to leverage whatever your passion is, that allows you, gives you a competitive edge in that space, which is, so who knows where you're going to land up. But we'll have a qualification. Yeah, it'll be multiple places. It'll change over the years, which is great. But the stuff that you've learned from the discipline over motivation and getting through the nasty stuff and realizing that failure doesn't mean the end. That stuff's going to be with you for life. That stuff's going to be valuable for the rest of your life. So it was crap, but well done. Yeah. I think I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of chat to other students, as it were, because it can be a very lonely, crazy feeling world when you're on your own. And when I'm working with students, it's very easy for them to look at me and go, yeah, but Yvonne, your CCA was a very long time ago, which it was fine. And so they need to hear from people more recently and kind of go, yeah, okay, I'm not crazy. The stuff is nasty. And what stuff do I need to be aware of? So I appreciate that you're prepared to share your journey, especially because it is very difficult to talk about stuff that doesn't go according to plan.
Yes. Yeah, I feel very privileged because I think being on this side now, you get to share your little tips and tricks. Being on the other side of PGDA, something that while you're studying, you don't think you're ever going to get there. So I think being on this side of the qualification, it's exceeded expectations. I think I've come across so many special individuals myself. So I think we really are moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And for those of you that are watching, like, whatever you're feeling, you need to be doing work. The feeling is generally not good and not positive through CTA. The feeling is like, this is hard, this is a lot, this is not going to work. No one else has experienced it as bad as this. The answer is yes, you're not alone. Everyone experiences it as badly as you. You have to keep doing the work. It's not about motivation, it's about the discipline. Yay. All right. Well, you need to keep in touch with us and let us know what your exciting life looks like. And we will keep following you for helping with the students. So do you have any last message for students who are currently worried that they're not going to pass this year?
I think I can just take it back to the beginning of the session where I said you need to give yourself as many chances as you need. I think with my own story, if the journey wasn't as difficult as it was, I don't think it would have touched as many lives as it did. So I think right now in the moment, it might feel like completely impossible, but just remember also that your designation is going to touch several lives once you do have it. I think, like you mentioned, Yvonne, sometimes it's difficult to remain motivated purely on the basis that there's this future reward. But now that you're living out the future reward, I think, sure, like it's just looking back and I feel like there's nothing I would change about the journey.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's good to know, especially, the fact that you wouldn't change anything about it is impressive.